So once more, thank you very much for joining this meeting. I'm very happy to be a host today. And at the very beginning, I would like to introduce myself for people who may not know me. I'm Bart Smuga, and first of all, I'm a big fan of Alteryx. I use Alteryx for several years right now, and if someone would ask me why I'm using Alteryx and why I decided to grow my career with Alteryx, I would answer that I love how simply Alteryx is and how big results you can achieve without any programming knowledge in the end. Moreover, I'm proud to be recognized as an Alteryx Ace. Luke as well. Luke joined our Alteryx Ace family recently. Alteryx Ace is a title given by Alteryx to the top contributors in the Alteryx community for the best Alteryx users around the world. I also co-founded DataPar. We are official Alteryx partners, and we help through Alteryx training and consulting. When it comes to this initiative, which we have right now, I am one of the leaders of Alteryx user group, which means that we organize on a regular basis meetings like that to spread the knowledge about Alteryx, to share the best practices, to gather Alteryx enthusiasts in one place to share the best practice of Alteryx. We have other Alteryx group leaders as well, as you can see right now on the screen, Emil, Sebastian, and Jakub. A few information at the very beginning before we'll start the presentation itself. The Alteryx user group meeting like this, the initiative that we started, has more than 3 years right now. We started this in 2021. We meet on quarterly basis and we share the use cases when it comes to Alteryx. We have some special guests today, and I will say a few more words about that. As you probably have had a chance to see, we'll talk about tax and GenAI later today. One more word from my side. You can see the roadmap of all meetings that we had so far. So as you can see, if you would be interested in watch some of the materials that we already discussed on meetings like that regarding a digital transformation or Alteryx in finance, or maybe you are interested in sales analytics that we have conducted with Mercedes-Benz, you can scan this QR code and we have all the recordings available for you to watch on the YouTube. So when it comes to today's agenda, I would like to introduce our amazing speakers. The first topic would be about automating tax processes with Alteryx. We'll start our event with Luke, Senior Director at Alvarez and Marsal. And Luke will show us how Alteryx can simplify complex tax processes like VAT, transfer pricing, or FX rate automation. From my perspective, I believe Alteryx is a really great choice when it comes to automating big data sets in tax departments. After Luke's presentation, we'll have 5 minutes for Q&A for a section that you could ask your questions, to unmute yourself or ask through the chat. We'll try to cover those. And then we have a second half of this meeting. We have a pleasure to have Jupiter to present a topic around generative AI in Alteryx. Jupiter is a real expert when it comes to Gen AI. He's a lead sales engineer at Alteryx, and I will be very honest with you. I had a chance to work closely with Jupiter in the past on some projects, and for sure I can admit that he's a real expert when it comes to Alteryx, and he'll present some nice generative AI and Alteryx use case later today. So I don't want to take much of your time. I will pass the voice to Luke right now to start the tax use case presentation right now.
Sure, thanks, Bart. Let me share my screen. Or if you could make me a host and let me share screen. I think that, there we go.
I will do that.
There we go. I think I got it. All right. You able to see my screen?
Yes, we can.
All right. So Let me flip to the next slide. So, good evening, afternoon, everyone. So just a quick intro on myself before we get into this. As Bart said, my name is Cornetta. I'm a senior director at Alvarez and Marsal. We are a global professional services firm. I sit in our tax practice. We have tax folks all around the world, and my focus is on tax technology. So, I'm based out of New York. I've had the opportunity to travel to our offices in Asia and Europe and see a whole bunch of tax use cases. Like Bart said, I was named an Alteryx Ace this year. I've been an Alteryx, one of the 40 somewhat Alteryx experts worldwide for a few years now as well. And just a little bit about myself here. Outside of work in Alteryx, I like traveling. A lot of great beaches in New York. Reading and being outside, playing sports and whatnot. To get into today's topics, I want to chat through Alteryx for tax and why Alteryx is a really great solution for tax. So, my team in tax technology, we help our clients and our folks at A&M that do tax compliance work internally to figure out the best way to automate processes, review data, and really streamline the work that we do. Because at the end of the day, Alteryx is a really great tool to do all of those things and get things done fast. And at a high level, I'm based in the US. I'm a US CPA, which, chartered accountant, I think is the equivalent in most European countries or outside of the US. But at the end of the day, in my travels to our offices around the world, there's a lot of commonalities that I see in tax work streams, even though the laws and requirements and filings are a little bit different, in each jurisdiction. At a high level, tax departments need to go through a data gathering exercise. Oftentimes, tax departments, and if there's tax folks on the line, that you're often the lowest on the totem pole when it comes to getting data. You have to go out to finance, you have to go out to different operational teams and really try to get data in whatever format that you can get it to figure out what your overall tax reporting needs to be. And when you think about the types of data that tax folks see, it could be ideally Excel files, could be CSV files, could be PDFs. It really runs the gamut based on what ERP system or systems you have versus, plus what, local Excel files people are keeping on their machines. And Alteryx is a really great way to pull all of that data from different sources together and automate a calculation or prepare. So once you get all that data, there's a data preparation exercise. Maybe you have to join FX rate data or transform a trial balance or general ledger data, whatever it might be, do some form of calculations. These calculations vary jurisdiction to jurisdiction, or even depending on what type you're doing, partnership tax versus dealing with fixed assets, whatever it might be, and outputting it in some way that you or your auditors could get comfortable with in the form of work papers or reports, or even outputting to some form of JSON or XML to file with the tax authorities or put into a tax software downstream. So while every jurisdiction is different, these are some common themes that I've seen throughout my travels and interaction with companies around the world and some of my colleagues in different A&M locations around the world. So we chatted through some of these things. I have a few use cases prepared that they range, with the short time that we have here today, they're more the beginner intermediate level and then some more advanced API type examples. But I do want to start with, for maybe those that aren't as familiar with Alteryx, I'll just bring up a blank canvas here and show you how quickly, why in many days, my day to day, I treat Alteryx like my Excel. So I have Alteryx is one of the first programs I open in the morning, and I have workflows that I check every morning, tied into our systems here. But in advance of this meeting, I pulled up, I went on Eurostat and downloaded some data. I'll just pop that up here. I downloaded country tax revenues, and it comes out in a big messy text file that looks like this. And at first glance, it's messy. I don't know, you could try to pull this into Excel and clean it up, but I just want to highlight how quickly we can clean something like this up using just a few steps. And like Bart said, you don't need programming knowledge. You just need to have a sense of the data and what it is and how you would, for most finance and tax people, thinking about in the way of how would you do it in Excel is a good way to start getting into Alteryx if you're not, if you're a beginner or just getting started with Alteryx. So I can drag that onto the canvas. I just dragged it in from my other screen. And I need to set it as a text file. So it's a delimited text file, and it's a tab delimited text file. And as soon as I do that, Alteryx starts to know what the rows and columns are just based on telling it that it's a delimited text file. And if I just run this workflow, it'll go through and pull all of that data out. And we can already start to get some rows and columns here. This first column is pretty messy. I know there's a few different units here. So it goes from, millions of euros to millions, and I think this is national, currency. So we'll do a few different filters real quick, and then we'll get into the use cases. So if I wanted to filter this data, I can bring in a filter tool. And for those of you that this is a trick that I learned relatively recently. If you have a tool selected and you double click in the toolbar, it'll automatically put the tool in instead of dragging and dropping. But if I want to just filter, I just want to focus on the data that's in euros. I'll just say this first column contains this, and then we'll get rid of some of the other data. And then I want to get these country codes. So the last section of this is country codes. There are a few here that are just general, like European regions, that I care less about. And there's a number of ways to parse this out. For sake of time, I'm just going to say give me the right two cells here, and pull out the country code here, and we can start to clean this up a little bit. And do further analysis if I wanted to see, sort it or summarize it. We can do a lot of different things here. And the nice thing about Alteryx is it's super visual. You can go through every step of the way. And in the tax world, when you were, potentially we're dealing with auditors or, controls, you can see, we did this filter, we got 231 records. We can also see what got filtered out. And that's going to be a running theme in a lot of the workflows that I show, is how do we put validations in place to know that the workflow is doing what we want it to. So I'm going to jump back to my presentation here and get into the first part of this, which is VAT. So value add tax is a common theme more globally, not so much in the US. We have different indirect taxes, but we have a few potential use cases that we think about when it comes to VAT. And this is going to become more and more prevalent with the onset of e-invoicing in many jurisdictions. It's happening in Europe, it's happening in Asia. But there's a few different things that we think about when it comes to VAT. The first is reconciliation. So oftentimes when it comes to VAT, there's usually it's either being calculated in your ERP system or by a tax engine, that's a bolt-on to your ERP system. And one of the things that is a common exercise, especially when you're first getting those tax engines set up, is identifying discrepancies between what's on your VAT returns or on your invoices versus what's actually booked in your ERP system into the VAT accounts. And that could be for a number of reasons. It could be that maybe there's a new product code that wasn't set up properly, or some issue with the tax engine firing back the tax amount into your ERP system. So Alteryx is a great way to get comfort in, if you pull your VAT data out of your tax engine or out of your invoice data and look at your general ledger accounts, you can start to spot, okay, did a transaction not get booked properly? Is there any variance, month to month in what those VAT amounts are? And the real risk that we're trying to avoid here is getting toward the end of the month or the end of the year and having a difference in what's been booked and having a liability, or potentially going through an audit and finding out, that maybe VAT wasn't being calculated correctly or put into your systems correctly. And that's the example that we'll show in a second here in Alteryx. The other piece is there's different rates across countries, even across product types. So you could leverage Alteryx to look at your transactional data, cleanse it, do certain validations, and look at it. We try to look at a lot of transaction level data when you have thousands or hundreds of thousands or even millions of transactions through a exception based lens. So put some validations, put some guardrails around what you actually want to look at, filter criteria to see, okay, what are my riskier transactions, maybe invoices that have multiple types of products on them with different rates applicable or whatever it might be, to make sure that you're applying the correct rates based on the jurisdiction, based on the products and all of that. And you can spit out, you can do this real time and get, nip any issues in the bud as they happen versus dealing with it when months or weeks down the line when it's time to file your returns. And the last piece is if you leverage something like Alteryx Server, you can really automate a lot of this. If you're able to get a connection into your ERP system, you can schedule these types of analyses to run every night or every week and go through your ERP data and pick out anything that seems strange or based on what issues you've seen in the past. You can build workflows to go into your data and preemptively tell you, okay, here's 10 transactions that happened that aren't showing how they're supposed to show based on the rules that you have programmed Alteryx to check for. And that's something that we do. I have workflows that run every Tuesday and send me emails with, send an email with a list of, whatever data that is relevant for me.
Okay. Hi.
We could all just go on mute. That'd be helpful. But let me just go into Alteryx now. I'll show the VAT example that I was mentioning. This is, and I apologize, my lights just have a motion sensor in this office, so be in the dark. There we go. So in the VAT space, this is a very basic workflow. In practice, there's a lot more that goes into it if you're connecting to ERP systems. But given our short time frame here, I want to just at a high level show how something like this would work. So maybe we have invoice level data from your tax engine or from your invoice data. In this case, we just have invoice ID and some high level amounts here. And we have a general ledger or trial balance where we have some of these accounts. And you'll notice in these different entries, we have a comments field with the invoice number. So we can try to get back to what was booked and see if there's any issues through a quick workflow where we filter to the right account for the VAT payable account. We parse out the invoice data. Let me run this real quick to see it. We parse out, we see, okay, my comments have invoice number at the beginning, and I really just need this to get the ID so I can do a join back. So once I parse out the invoice ID, I can join that up with my transactional level data and see immediately, okay, is there any, this one invoice fell out of the join. So there's maybe something didn't get booked correctly. Maybe the connector between my bolt-on tax engine, my ERP system failed on that day or for that transaction for some reason. We can go check the logs and see what happened. For the ones that did match up, which is most of them, we can then go see, okay, is there a variance between, for whatever reason, what my tax engine says the VAT should be and what my ERP actually booked as the VAT. And we can see there's 2 instances where that variance exists. And we built some message tools into this workflow, and I'm a big fan of message tools to, when you have a process down, you can just look at your warnings and say, okay, right off the bat, if I run this workflow, without clicking through all the tools like I just did, I can just go look at my warnings and say, okay, there's 2 invoices that don't reconcile and 1 invoice that didn't make it into my GL from a tax perspective, and go investigate that way. So this is a very simplified workflow for purposes of demonstration, but at a high level, this is an analysis that I've seen done very frequently to make sure that to double check a lot of the calculations that are happening on an automated basis, because there are rare instances where issues do happen, but if you're dealing with large amounts, it could add up to a significant liability and audit risk should there ever be an issue. Let me pop back to my presentation for the next set here. The next piece that's relevant, in the European space, or certainly in any company that is dealing with many jurisdictions, is transfer pricing. And potential use cases that we've seen and helped my clients with are calculations looking at what is the financial statement data say, what should based on your transfer pricing policy for any intercompany transactions, what should the appropriate adjustment be, whether it's a markup on the cost or some sort of other allocation that maybe happens based on the on the salaries of folks that are working across different jurisdictions or entities. There's a number of, for those not familiar with transfer pricing, I don't have time to get into the details of it, but there's a lot of different allocations or calculations that need to happen based on whatever the transfer pricing policy in place is. And there's transfer pricing is more based on the economics of the transactions versus like tax law, but there are calculations that can be done to make sure that the policy that you have in place is being followed effectively to help either book those transfer pricing adjustments and document it. So again, if you're dealing with the tax authority, you can demonstrate that you're following the policy, straight through to the financial reporting side of it. We can also do an analysis very similar to the VAT space of looking at your transactional, your intercompany transactions, and making sure that if there's supposed to be an 8% markup on an intercompany transaction or a 15% markup, that's being done. Oftentimes, depending on how modern your ERP system is, there's a lot of customization that needs to happen in intercompany transactions to make sure that happens. I've seen companies that just do it totally separate outside of the ERP system, depending on how old their ERP is. So doing an analysis on those transactions to make sure that the proper pricing is being done either when the transaction happens or to clean up. Some companies do a monthly or quarterly just adjustment to make sure that transfer pricing policies are being followed. And the other piece, this is less so for companies, but more so for professional services firms. Benchmarking is a big part of transfer pricing. You have to kind of, from an industry perspective and a jurisdiction perspective, it's a lot of what is the market saying, and how do you make sure that you're coming up with a rate that represents an arm's length transaction. So you can do a lot of benchmarking work with your market data, with your transactional data, and see what is the right, come up with a benchmark and an industry report to help justify the rates and the pricing that you're doing to demonstrate that arm's length principle. And I'm not a transfer pricing expert, so if there are any on the line, I've probably grossly oversimplified a lot of this, but these are all very common use cases that we've seen in this space. One thing on the documentation side, which is the next use case that we'll show here, is I will show, we have this PDF that I downloaded from a firm that we do a lot of work. This is a publicly available document. And the nice thing is this is just an overall transfer pricing guide for this for 2024. And it goes through all the countries. And the nice thing about this is it actually has a table for each country that tells you what are the documentation rules. So master file, local file, submission deadlines, any penalties. And what we can do is use Alteryx to parse out those tables and create kind of an overall running list. So in a very easy to filter way. So okay, if I'm dealing with my Australian entity, here's the thresholds. If I'm dealing with my Polish entity, here's what the thresholds are, and deadlines and penalties. So from a transfer pricing perspective, and this is more of a document parsing transfer pricing example, we can go look at our rules. I've parsed this into just a text input for sake of demonstration. But what we can do is you can see we have 605 records of pretty messy data that comes out of the text parsing, and you could do this either with the computer vision tools, or if you do not have access to the computer vision or intelligence suite add-on license, you could use a tool like Power Query or some other OCR tool to do the parsing. And then Alteryx is really great at cleaning this up, because what some of the challenges in this PDF specifically there's some things like some of these get read in with new lines in it, and it doesn't necessarily detect that it's all one cell. So we do some cleanup on figuring out, okay, this is the country. If it's whatever is below summary tables is the country, and we can see it goes, this is the Argentina data, this is the Australia data, and we can start to parse out some of this data and group it. In the interest of time, I won't go through all of these steps, but Alteryx is great to go through, figure out what are, these are the Finland records related to penalty provisions, or these are the Germany records related to documentation threshold down here, and ultimately come up with a nice output that we can layer into an analysis or layer into different documentation that gets prepared to help put some additional review and context around what the transfer pricing work is, to make sure that we know, okay, for every jurisdiction has similar requirements, but some have higher penalties, some have more stringent documentation thresholds, and this is a great way just to parse this out and put it into any sort of work papers related to transfer pricing. You could just put this as a reference for the different countries that you're interacting with, perhaps. The last example, I don't think I have a slide with a screenshot of the workflow, so I'll just go to that workflow, is FX rate data. And this is a very common thing, especially, in maybe in the European space, when you're dealing with more, you have the UK that's using pounds and a lot of mainland Europe using euro. This is something that I've seen come up quite a bit, where we need to either pull historical rates for a number of currencies, or pull very specific days for if you're doing a transactional analysis and there's specific days. And in the past, this is actually this workflow is born out of a lot of requests that I received from my team, because historically they might go to there's a number of different FX websites. So they might go out and search one currency pair, search another currency pair, and there's a lot of great sources out there to go pull that data all in one shot. So for instance, I wanted to pull FX rate data for the last since November 1st. So this formula is just saying pull me data from November 1st through today. And then I have an API that I've set up to this company or this website called openexchangerates.org. It has a lot of historical FX rate data. So I've dynamically generated my API call by substituting the date into this. And this is just for those, I know this is being recorded, this is a temporary API key. So if anyone tries to get a little smart and try to piggyback on, it's very limited in what it can do. So makes out the API call and it comes back with some JSON. The purpose of this workflow, this is right now, since I'm in the US, it's pulling from compared to USD, pulling every other currency. So we can see, I think this is the Dubai or one of the United Arab Emirates currency. We see all these different currency pairs come back so this is for USD to all these currencies on November 18th, for instance. So it comes back with all the records. Alteryx is great at doing some JSON parsing, so we can see now it pulls all my FX rates out into rows. Do some more data cleansing. I'll skip down to this. We have a nice little table of date, currency, and the exchange rate. And we can go and format that. Maybe we want it in a table like this. So I have my dates maybe as columns and my currency as rows, or maybe in a stacked way that this is a little more conducive to a VLOOKUP or a index match in Excel. If you wanted to go layer this into a work product or as supporting information, or be able to refresh FX rates on a periodic way. You can also use the summarize tool to figure out what's for this time period since November 1st to December 11th, what was the minimum and the maximum exchange rate for a specific currency. So if I look at maybe just filter to euro, since I'm in the US and most of you are in Europe, we can see in this time period the exchange rate fluctuated a little bit, and we can also calculate an average rate, which is oftentimes used in many calculations, depending on what it is for tax. You need an average rate or a weighted average or some sort of, depending on when the transactions occurred or what the calculation is. So you can calculate an average rate for all these currencies and go through, use that to help facilitate your work product. So we can make this feed into a lot of different processes. We've also put a different version of this up on my instance of Alteryx server. So the teams can go in and choose which currency pairs and dates they want to run. And they don't need to know how to use Alteryx. They can just enter that data on the server or on the gallery rather, and get an Excel report out based on the inputs they chose, which in the background are configuring the API calls to pull what they choose. So a lot of things. I could talk about this for hours. I know we're coming up on time here, and I definitely want to hear about the GenAI use cases that Jupyter has. So I'll stop there for any questions, and we'll move on with the programming here.
Thank you, Luke. It was a great presentation. And if I could just say a few words, I really like that you mentioned that Alteryx is the first thing that you open at the morning. I feel the same. Like this is just a habit, and I feel that every day. And when it comes to VAT reporting, I believe the discrepancies and the reconciliation itself is one of the biggest pain when it comes to working with tax processes. And in Excel, it is really hard, especially that when you think about the limits of Excel. Limits are up to 1 million, I guess, when it comes to analyzing data in Excel. And Alteryx has no limits when it comes to that. And last thing, I really like the message tool that you had. The message tool that you could put the information that invoices are not found in GL data. I thought that it was really cool. So thank you for sharing. And meantime, I will ask maybe someone from audience would like to ask one question, for instance, to Luke right now before we'll start with Jupyter presentation.
Yes, you mentioned invoicing that it's becoming more common in many countries. What use case do you see here?
So from an e-invoicing standpoint, there's a number of I don't know that Alteryx is going to be your e-invoicing solution. There's a lot of tax engines that will bolt on and do that e-invoicing to transmit the data to the tax authorities and government authorities. But I think it really on the e-invoicing front is going to come down to the reconciliation effort. So even right now, there's reconciliation between just tax engines and what's being computed. But even when you start to look at e-invoicing and what data is being sent electronically out to different authorities, your Alteryx is going to be a very helpful tool to review that and see, make sure that maybe every invoice that you've issued that needs to be done electronically has been done electronically, or to help validate the data. I think in the testing of implementing a lot of these tools, it's a helpful way to look at it, and it's also helpful once it's live to just put some controls around it and automate some of those checks to make sure that your solution and your your e-invoicing solution is working properly. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you for answer.
So I think we can sum up that reconciliation and validation is the crucial aspect here when
in
it
the
comes
tax
to work
world.
with
It's tax is very binary, right? It's either right or wrong. So putting some
That's
of
correct.
those checks in there is a great use case. So I'll stop talking so we can get to the next topic here.
Yeah. So if you have, meantime, any questions to Luke, please write a question on the chat. I will try to answer those. And meantime, I would love to invite Jupiter to present the second topic regarding GenAI and Alteryx. The stage is yours, Jupiter.
Thank you, Bart. Thank you, everyone. So I hope you are doing great. I'm happy to be here. It's actually my second time to present to the user group, and I hope that the session today will be quite insightful. So the idea for me today is to give you some inspiration so that we can now try to also experiment with GenAI in general. So I know that GenAI is in the mouth of everyone, but many people think this is something just for the data scientists. And we at Alteryx, we believe that we democratize the technology, and we believe that GenAI is also the tool that you can use in order to enhance your business processes in general. So I structured this call or this presentation to be in 5 parts, or basically 4 parts. So the first time I will just highlight a few example on how generative AI is impacting your industry. I think it is quite interesting to know what is happening so that you are not surprised. We have seen a lot of customers, and we have seen also a lot of companies that went bankrupt since the let's say the wave has started. And then also I want to present to you how Alteryx can help you actually using the generative AI in general, large language model in particular, as a toolbox that you can reuse inside your workflow to enhance your analysis. We will limit just to enhancing your analysis, but there are different use cases where you can use it. And of course, I will present some innovative use case just to give you some kind of inspiration, something that you can take with you. The idea is that at the end of this presentation, you can think about where you can actually use this technology in your different department. And of course, we will finish this with a simple use case, something very simple, but that will be more interactive. When I do this presentation, I often come to this part when it comes to how generative AI impacting your industry. And generally, I like to start by small video. I hope that you can see the video, right? So if something is not so fine, just let me know. But the most interesting about this is this video was published the night when the result of the election in the US was presented. And I was actually at the conference and I was not sleeping because I have a presentation the next day. And then I go over the internet and I saw it. I say, wow. The idea is not the video itself, but the wow effect came for me because this was so fast. It was like 2 or 3 hours just after the result has been published. And in my mind, I was thinking, who can do that, right? And I remember in my early time when I was still a student, to be able to do something like that, you will need probably something like, because these are fictional character, you probably something like 2 weeks or even 1 month. But this is something that somebody has generated just in one night, or maybe in a few hours. And this is the kind of transformation in general term that we are going to face. We have seen this kind of transformation in the past, and we are seeing that the transformation is quite fast. And I want to take another example just to illustrate this. This is a task that generally data scientists will use. So generating Will Smith eating spaghetti, right? This is the status last year around March, right? You can see that the image, the video, the generation was not quite good. And we were predicting, many people were predicting, okay, we can get this Hollywood standard probably in something like 3 or 5 years. And just 1 year after, you can look at how this is good, how good actually the generation has become. And when you have this tool at your hand, you can now get some kind of freedom into the innovation. You can see exactly that I can now say, okay, he's batting with spaghetti, with the spaghetti coming out of the flour. You can see that I can now start to innovate, right? And the good thing here is not, as I say, the video itself or the transformation, but the speed. And we have seen also this kind of transformation in the past. So generally, in the past, it was taking like 3 to 5 years until you have a new task, let's say a problem, and you are looking for a solution. So you have 3 to 5 years until you have an automated solution. But here, we are talking about something in months. And so generally also in your industry, no matter in which department you are, no matter in which process you want to automate, or no matter what kind of insight you want to have, what kind of problem you have, we are expecting that in the next year, you will have just like 2 or 3 months until somebody comes with a solution. And this kind of disruption is something that Alteryx, not even you or our customer, Alteryx has been also able to experience. And now we get you one very simple example. We released, for example, Alteryx Copilot around March this year. But by the end of September and October, we have also another solution, for example, where you can actually interact with Alteryx Designer by voice and where you can let the computer build the workflow for you. The solution right now is not really ready, though that we can put in production, but it's something also that gets the disruption. And the idea is that in order to have the Copilot, we made a lot of investment. It's a new technology. We have to provide you with the Copilot, but at the same time, on the open source world, there is a shift in transformation shift that is more faster than what we can deliver, right? And this kind of things, we can see it not only for you, but we have seen also a lot of customers that are suffering from that. Another example, I like to take the example of In Silico Medicine. This is a small company, so they are not small anymore, but 2 years ago, they were very small. That was putting out in the market new drug 3 times faster than Bayer. Bayer has around 650,000 employees, and this company, by the time, we have around 10,000 employees. And why they were able to do that? Because they understand early in the days that in order to innovate, you have to embed AI or artificial intelligence in all your processes. And I did a lot of research to understand exactly what is this company and how are they able. And I come into this quote for one of the global business development director. They said, the things that push us forward is that they put AI in the hand of everyone, but not only putting it, but it was so easy that they were able to democratize it at scale. And I take this example because this is where everyone wants to go. Even you in the tax department, in the controlling department, in the supply chain department, in optimization, you want to go where every task that you want to do, you want to have AI embedded in it and help you also grow in that. And Alteryx, I take it, we took actually this as our mission, and we want to deliver because we know that our tool is easy. We know that everyone can use it. We know that this can be part of your business process. So the main core for us is to bring that kind of technology into your hand so that you can embed it and use it in your everyday life. So now we know that this is important, right? And we are not the only one that state that this is important. Even McKinsey, most of the time, they say you can just get the value out of AI if you democratize it and you put that technology in the hand of everyone. So now the question is, how can Alteryx help you? How can you scale it to have it everyone have generative AI in his hand? In my experience, I have been discussing more than 200 use cases as of now and implementing some of them. I have around 60 use cases now with the customer that are experimenting with it. And there are 5 keys that I think is quite important for you to know. The first one is to have a clear business-led strategic roadmap. Not every use case is the right one. So try to focus on what will brings you more value with less effort. Of course, there will be use case where we say, okay, if I solve this use case, I will shift my business model completely. But there are also on the other part, smaller use case that where the value is not so big, but it's something that you can implement and the risk is quite small. So try to think first of those kind of use case and try to focus there. Try to implement these low-hanging fruits, and with more expertise that you grow, then you can also try to expand. The second thing also that we believe that I found out is the skill. Many people think that in order to be able to use generative AI, you need to be a data scientist. This is not true. And in fact, this is the first technology that is so easy and that is so usable that you can find so much tool out in the market or in the open source world where you are able to build a POC in the matter of hours. I say a POC in the matter of hours. And we believe that if you are a data analytics, if you are actually transform data, you are able also to use that kind of technology to enhance your business process. And of course, data and data governance is take a huge part, because one thing also for generative AI is that you deal also with a lot of unstructured data, which means that generally data will not come in the form that you have. But there, Alteryx also position itself and we help you because you have the ability to deal with PDF document, with image, and even with video within Alteryx Designer. And of course, the technology and the tooling, you need something that is quite simple, Alteryx, for example. And of course, one thing also that I want to say to you, when you start this, think about agile delivery. Focus on those small use cases, define the time frame, like 1 or 2 weeks to have the first POC, and really try to iterate based on those POCs. So if something is not working, be ready also to say, this is a lot of investment that you are going to have. And generally, when you work in this agile environment, the thing is, it is quite difficult for the IT, for example. For them, they need something in the long shot. They know that I need to plan the resource. I need to know exactly how everything's work. But for you, when we say you work in an agile environment, you need a tool that we give or a technology that you will put at the hand of every business user so that it can implement very fast. And this is where Alteryx also really help. So this is what you need to put in place. And I said, Alteryx help in many ways. We have different things that we can help. The first thing that we help generally is on data onboarding, meaning that you have a tons of internal information, document, database, legacy system that you want to aggregate all the information, probably also to put it at the disposal of a generative AI model. We help with data onboarding. This is what we do. Of course, Gen AI consumption. So imagine the use case where you have actually a large language model deployed in your company, and then you just need to use that specific capability inside your workflow. And this will be also the focus of the demo for today, where we will say, okay, we have actually something that is deployed, and we want to use that capability in the workflow. And of course, there are other things like Gen AI application validation and monitoring, Gen AI application implementation itself, meaning that you want to fine tune, but this is more for advanced team. So now let's look at some use case that I think is quite interesting for you. You are coming from the tax department as a standard business. We are dealing also with different use cases like reconciliation, transfer pricing, or some KPI calculation. Before I dip into the use case, I want to make two things very clear, very fast. Generally, and this is actually a Gartner recommendation, you need, when you want to implement a use case or to think about a use case, you need to separate in two categories. We have on the one side what we call everyday AI, and then you have on the other side what we call game-changing AI. We consider game-changing AI everything that will change the core of your business. Thinking about, for example, a Hollywood company, which now discover OpenAI Sora, where you can generate picture artificially or generate video artificially. This is something that will completely disrupt the way that they operate right now, meaning that this will have a huge impact. For those kind of use case, we recommend to have actually a lead team leading that kind of thing. We call it a moonshot project. Right? But there is a lot of things that we think everyday AI. Think about, for example, I have an Excel file where I have some kind of entries, but in that entries I have a column with a country name, but I know that not all the input in that country name is in the right format. Or I have a country code, but I know that the country code can sometimes be in the wrong format, right? If I want to do it right now, I will go and consider each different cases where the data is not well formatted, and then I will build a custom logic to transform the non-well formatted data into the well formatted one. The problem is that the next time that I will discover a problem, right, discover a new case, I will build a custom logic. But because I know the large language model is so powerful, I can use that capability to say, instead of me building a custom logic, I will say, this is supposed to be the name of the country. Please output that name in the right format, or output me the country code for that. Okay, so this kind of use case, for example, for you, very simple, can be data transformation, could be a data cleansing, could be also something like a translation, could be also something that I say I get a report in Chinese, right? Before I involve everyone, I can ask a large language model to transform that Chinese in English. This kind of use case that really enhance your day-to-day life. This is the kind of use case that we are talking about, everyday AI. So now, how can you find the everyday AI use case? In general, a large language model, a generative AI technology, or a large language model more in particular, we have 4 capabilities that you can use. The first one is the Explore. I call Explore because a large language model has been trained on the internet data, which means that the human knowledge is embedded in it. And I can use that human knowledge in my workflow. For example, if I want to have the country code for that specific country, right? Before I find a mapping table, I can just ask the large language model, this is Germany, give me the ISO code of this country code, right? Or for example, I have, let's say, some data, the table, a column that says this is supposed to be, for example, the weight of a person. But inside this 1 millionth row, there is one cells where I see like 1,000 kilograms. I know that 1,000 kilograms will never be the weight of the person, right? You can actually ask the large language model to format this kind of thing because he knows the human knowledge. He knows what is valid or not valid. You can just make a simple prompt to say validate that kind of things. So when I say explore, use the general knowledge that you have, that the large language model provides to you. Use it in order to enhance your analysis. The second thing that I think is also important is the capability of large language model to ingest a lot of information and transform this information and put it in the form that is easy for you. So we think about exploiting information. So you have, for example, a policy on the one side. This could be 100-page, 500-page of documents. And then you have, for example, another document, but that document needs to be conform to every single rules that you have in that policy. Generally, this is what the expert will do. The expert, not only the expert with more than multiple years of experience, we look into the document and say, okay, inside this document, I think that you feel this policy, this policy, this policy, or say this one is missing. Actually, because I know my large language model can synthesize a huge amount of this information, I can give that policy as an input and take the second document that I want to verify, and I ask to him, please, is this document really conform to the policy that I just give it to you? Right? This kind of use case, they can now analyze it and then say, no, it is not. And the good thing is that he will also say why. And if you want to have something that is more robust, you can also break that kind of workflow in small pieces. So you can take the 500-page of the policy and say, what if I want to check another document to be conform to that policy? What kind of question should I ask? He will generate 500 question. Then you generate the question, and then I go to the second step. In the second step, I will say, I have this document. These are the questions that I want to check. Please check it for me. Okay. And of course, the third kind of use case that we have is what we call generating. So it's about content generation in the marketing. And I want also to take the example of generating, because sometime in your workflow, you also need some additional information that you have to do a Google search. But before I go to the Google search to find the kind of information, I know that my large language model had the human knowledge embedded in it. I can just ask him for this information that I am looking for in my data set, please add the information. And of course, the last part of use case is automate and act. These 4 categories is just to give you some kind of insight on where you have to look for the use case. Of course, I brought also a very simple example. So in the category of explore or utilize the general knowledge, you have example like data cleansing or normalization. This is what I was saying. You have data in the wrong form. You want to bring it in another form. Instead of you building a custom logic, just ask a large language model to do it for you. Fact checking and validation. For example, you have a report, but you want to validate the semantic of the data, not the form of the data, but the semantic of the data. You can say, okay, this is supposed to be a column where I have the weight of the person. Is it plausible? Okay. This is supposed to be, for example, the amount of transaction for a meal. Is it plausible? So you will see then your large language model just giving output when you have for example, it's supposed to be a meal invoices, and then you have something like 1,500 euros. So you will say, please have a look on it. This could not be a meal. Or if it is a meal, then probably you have to, a third person have to look on it. You have also in that particular case, text correction, anomaly and error detection. So I will have a data set, for example, of the transaction. And then I will say, look into over the general form of this data set and try to find the things that are anomalies. For example, the thing that comes with negative point are supposed to be or supposed to be positive, but the things that are not in this normalization form. Large language model that in normal distribution, large language model have the capability also to identify these kind of things. So these are the use cases, and you have here now highlighted some use cases that I personally also implemented with some customer. Some of them are in the testing, some of them are also already in production. But look at the whole piece. It's something that we are going to provide for you sometime in the future as an implementation example, so that you can take it and reuse it in your company. So I want to conclude this presentation with a small demo for a small use case. I will take the use case for exploitation of the document, meaning that I have some information that I want to exploit. And I like this use case because this try to try to show exactly the art of the possible. I want to mention that this is just an implementation example. It's not perfect yet, but we are still working to provide you with another customer an implementation template. And the use case is about invoice passing. So everyone, for example, that are probably in the tax department or in the court knows how difficult it is, for example, to pass a PDF document. So you receive the invoices, then you have on your SAP system something that is embedded, and you want to check, okay, what I have as a PDF in my invoice, is it what I have in SAP? So in that particular case, what I will do generally is that I will, you can use Intelligence Suite to extract the content or different part of this document. But the problem is that once you have built the logic and you have another template for these invoices, then you need to change the logic, right? And it's something that is quite difficult also to solve, because the more you go, this is so dynamic. So your supplier has the invoice in that specific form today, tomorrow it will change, after tomorrow it will change. And every time you have to change the logic also in order to automate that. In that specific use case, what we do is that we are not going to take only the parts of the invoices, we are going to take the whole text of the invoice, no matter in which form it is. So you can see here in the workflow, we start by looking into, let me increase that. We will start, for example, by looking into a specific folder where we have different invoices. We will just select the absolute part of these invoices. We will then take our OCR tool to extract all the text that we find in the invoice, no matter in which form it is. And then with that specific information, what we are going to do, we are going to create a specific prompt, meaning an instruction that we are going to give to the large language model. And we are going to say to the large language model, this is the text content of an invoice. Please extract this information for me. In that specific example, what you see is that the instruction that I am giving is in English. I will say, for example, okay, you are a computer program that translates invoice header into a JSON file, and you need to recognize the beginning and the end of invoice, and please extract the following data points. So you will be able to extract, let's say, extract the Rechnung number. It is in German, but the instructions are in English because the use case was based in Germany. Rechnungnummer, Total Amount, Mehrwertsteuer, Rechnungsaussteller, Umsatzsteuer, Datum, Ansprechpartner. And here in the formula, we just add the text, meaning the text that I find in the invoice, and I will just let the large language model solve it for me. And one thing that I also do is that I say I don't want the text at the end. I want everything in the JSON format. Okay? So you can look now, I will now here with that specific macro that we built, the macro are open source, so you can also use it. That specific macro that we built, we send it, in that specific case, we send it to Fireworks AI using the model Mistral, and we get different response. So for the first invoice, this is what we were able to extract from the text. And of course, you can apply it to one model, but because Alteryx is actually agnostic to the large language model and the platform, you can also apply, for example, to other platforms like Grok. You will have a similar result. You can apply it for any scale to Llama Instruct, the 8 billion model, or Together AI to have an open source one, Queens, for example. And all of them will produce what they think is the better representation of this. And now using Alteryx JSON parser, you are able to bring it in more tabular form, right? This result in a more tabular form. And to avoid, and I would say, to avoid, for example, that you have things, hallucination and so on, we are not using only one model, but you use different models, and then you have the ability to say, make a voting, meaning that I have 4 different models that has been trained differently on different platforms, let them run, and then check the result. And if all the models agree on specific value, I am 100% sure that this is the value. If a large language model in that specific case will think about something differently, then you will be able also to flag it to say probably a human need to review that. Okay? So this is a very simple use case, how you can do. We have a lot, as I presented in my PowerPoint presentation. So feel free to join us, to reach out via LinkedIn or via email or directly to Bart if you want to see more. And we will provide this kind of tool, these kind of things at your disposal so that you can also experiment with it. And I want to mention that we are not bound to a specific platform. Could be OpenAI, but could be also something that is deployed in your company. Or if you want, it could be also something that will run locally on your computer. And I actually have one example here. For example, here, these are run it beforehand. So when you run it locally on your computer, everything, you can see here, this is just a test for me. Everything will be executed locally on your computer. No need to send your data outside. Okay? And this is a simple tool that we built, and the tool is available right now if you want as an open source or implementation example. Okay, so I have a lot for you, but I will stop there since we do not have a lot of time. If you have any questions, you want to know something, just let me know. And please feel free to write me, send an email if you want to have a deep dive session on it. I'm happy to do that with you.
Thank you, Jupiter. It was a perfect presentation as always. I had a chance to see your presentation in the past, and I always like it very much. And I totally agree on the reference that you made regarding game-changing AI and everyday AI. And it is just a true information that you provided. And I'll be honest, like on my real example, I do everyday AI for last 2 years, and it saves me up to 2-3 hours per day. So
Yes.
if it is that easy to access AI, I believe everyone could try even a small use case that you referred to do reiteration, to approach that in an agile mindset in the end. So I really like that. Thank you, Peter. And I saw a few questions already on the chat. So Peter, I believe that would be great to
I
answer
didn't
them.
have access to the chat, but let me read, or you can read some of them.
Yes. So the first question that I see, how do we get this connector?
Okay,
So,
just send me one email and I can provide the connector to you. We are going actually to post it at the end of the month officially on our community. So the different connector for the different platform, we have also a universal connector that can allows you to connect more than 1,000 models on more than 20 plus platforms, which give also a lot of feature that I haven't presented here. Just reach out, send an email, and happy to share it with you. And actually, there is one connector actually already available. So the OpenAI connector. This is something that you can still go to the community, download it. It's quite good. Of course, if you do not have a restriction that some data goes to OpenAI, you can use it, but it's up to you.
Perfect. And I just sent the email address of Jupiter. So if you'd like to reach out to Jupiter or myself, I will send my email address as well. If you need any questions or support, we are happy to help. And meantime, I see that we are on time. I have one more information which I would like to share with you right now at this moment. I hope you can see my screen. I will start sharing this. So just to sum up everything, I wanted to share you the information that we are officially changing the name of our Alteryx user group initiative. And later next year, we will be named as Central Europe Alteryx user group. To be honest, nothing else will change. Like just the name will be different. So don't be surprised when we'll invite you under a new naming convention, for instance, next year to join our meetings. Moreover, I put here the information about the QR code, as you can see in the middle. If you would like to join our community, you would like to watch some recordings that we had in the past on the user group meetings that we hosted, please feel free to scan the QR code and you can find a lot of resources there as well. And right now, I'm very happy to say thank you to everyone. It was just a great audience and great session. If you have any questions to Jupiter and myself or Luke, I will send an email of Luke as well on chat in a minute. Please feel free to reach out to us.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Bart. Thank you.
Have a great evening,
Thanks,
guys.
everyone.
See you.
Bye.
Bye.